We're here with the meeting of the Naples Daily News Editorial Board and Bonita Springs mayoral candidate Steve McIntosh. Thank you for joining us here.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
So Steve, just pretty much everybody's probably familiar with your background, but in case we've got some newcomers here, what would you like to tell them how long you've been here in Bonita Springs?
Sure, I'm a 20-year resident with my family and business. I grew up in a small town in Indiana, family of farmers and factory workers. Married my high school sweetheart. I was publicly educated from kindergarten to PhD. I'm a veteran, and my only agenda for this mayoral race is to make sure we have the quality of life in the city that everybody expects and deserves.
Can you fill in a little bit there in terms of your educational background and your career?
Sure. Lucky enough to be accepted to go to Purdue University, graduated, almost immediately went into the Army active duty and came back, spent a total of 6 years Army active and reserve. Went back to Purdue, got a master's degree in industrial administration and industrial relations. Went to work for a Fortune 500 company, and over the next 15 or so years drove my family through half a dozen states and what were considered to be bigger jobs, promotions, and so on. But that's where I learned about real business. And even though you have a master's degree in business, it's a real practice that I think teaches you. Had the opportunity to do a lot of strategic planning, team building, assessment of people. Managed an international piece of the business corporation for a while. And 20 years ago, we had the opportunity with both our kids out of the house to come back to Florida, where my folks have been for now 40 years, would have been 40 years. We had a small place down here, moved down here, started our own practice, Tartan Consulting. We are focused on strategic planning, the sorts of things we did in corporate life, team building, assessment of people. So I think those are the skills that are most critical, really, for a mayor in terms of leading a council and managing a city. And I think proof of that is that I have the endorsement of all three of the previous mayors of Bonita Springs. So I'm a lucky man. I'm thankful every morning where I live and what I have.
What appealed to you about making the move from the council seat to the mayor?
Mayor Nelson's been a terrific mayor for this city. Under his leadership, we've made a lot of progress. I'm not willing to give that up. I've been his deputy for 4 of the 6 years on council. I've been mentored. I've been prepped to be mayor. I understand the administrative side of the city, but more than that, I understand the softer side. I understand the people. The 20 years that I've been here, we've spent in community service, and I think if you kind of were laughing the other night, if you went alphabetically, we'd run from Art League, Bonita Springs Utilities, Chamber of Commerce, all the way through Wonder Gardens, YMCA, and Zonta. So one of the things that does for you is gives you connections throughout the community so that when you have broad-based issues, you're able to pull the right people together to solve those problems. That and the fact that I have a deep love for this city. I've been here a long time. I've seen it grow. I was here before in corporation when people were trying to manage a city without a real government to support it. So I want to see that continue to grow. I think the things you're going to find in the next 10 years will make everyone proud. We're going to have a downtown that's unique. It's got its own Florida style with bookends of the Shangri-La Hotel and the spa, and at the south end, and the bookend of the Wonder Gardens that's coming online as a green space botanical garden right on the Imperial River on the north end. So I want to make sure that those things happen. I want to make sure that what the citizens expect out of their city government is given to them, and I believe I'm the right person to do that.
You mentioned under Mayor Nelson there had been a lot of progress, and you're not willing to let that slide. What are some of the things that you would turn on progress?
Well, I think the key things in my administration will be, as I have always focused on, and I think Mayor Nelson helped me to understand how they fit together, are the environment and the budget. Those are the two things I always look at when we start to make decisions. Balanced budget is absolutely critical. I think there's a misunderstanding among some of the candidates about the difference between debt and deficit spending. This city has never gone into deficit spending. We have even Alexander Hamilton, the first treasurer of the United States, said some debt is good for a government, and we've never been at the place where we were in any kind of problem with debt. We've never, in some of the most difficult municipal times, Brent, in the past 6-8 years, we never even thought about raising taxes. We maintained that millage rate. We tightened our belt. We made sure that we knew that the correct services and the correct way of spending money were there. So, number one, I want to make sure that we continue with that balanced budget, fiscal responsibility. And secondly is the environment. People live here. People move here. In fact, most of the people who live in this city who've been here in the last 20 years could have lived anywhere in the world. And they picked Bonita Springs. And it's because of what we can offer that are pretty rare and unique. Green space, a good, obviously good temperate environment, but more than that, we have a natural resource, set of natural resources here that are pretty rare. The Estero Bay, the 3 rivers that run right through the center of Bonita Springs. We're never going to look like East Florida. We won't, East Coast Florida. We're going to have green space. We're going to have things for our grandkids to be proud that they can say, hey, I live in Bonita Springs, so this is where people want to live. I honestly believe we'll be an eco-tourist destination at one point because of the things we're doing with the Wonder Gardens, the downtown, the fact that the Imperial River is already popular, and we bring people from around the area, from around the state, really, to compete on some of the paddleboard, canoeing, and kayaking contests we have.
Out on the east side, how off limits is the DRGR in terms of development?
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of emotion around the DRGR. I sat on the Bonita Springs Utilities Board. I understand where our water comes from. I understand how recharge works and what the DRGR can be. I think the misperception sometimes is that the potential recharge in the DRGR is more valuable than what it really may be. Now, the science is still kind of mixed, frankly. You'll get reports both directions, but I can tell you the Conservancy of Southwest Florida and the South Water Management District both say it has minimal recharge, but our real water comes from the aquifers that come from the north and flow down here. So the question really is not only about environment, but it's about protecting green space, and we want to make sure that's number one priority. Well, I'll probably get some tomatoes thrown at me about this, but it's more about green space and maintaining the natural environment than it is about drinking water at this point in my mind. That's what I see from what I've been around. But the real question in most people's mind is growth. That's the issue that has people more emotional about the DRGR, I think, than it does about the natural environment in some cases. And I'm probably stepping way out of bounds here for a candidate, but that's the way I feel. People are very concerned about growth here. I get it. They don't. We've already turned down the high rises over on the Estero Bay. The DRGR has a limit of one home per 10 acres at the moment, and that's the way it's going to be for a while. I'm looking at the potential. Well, I'm looking at the incoming council, regardless of who sits in the center seat. There's not a lot of appetite for growth. It's just not going to be there, and it's proven itself in several different ways. But back to the original question on the DRGR, I think the advocacy to maintain the DRGR in its natural state is driven primarily by issues of growth. And realistically, most of the people, if I was in a crowd and I said, please raise your hand if you've ever been to the DRGR, it wouldn't be many people. The DRGR has been ditched and diked and dammed and dug on and generally destroyed for the last 100 years. It needs help. And we as a city government don't have the money to do that. There are people who say, well, you can get grants. Yeah, you can get grants for $10,000, but it's hard to get grants for $10 million. But if you really apply yourself, you create a strategy that looks at all the elements that have gone in so far to creating what we know about the DRGR, I think there are answers. I don't have the answer for you right now, but they're there. And if we really stop, if we stop looking at it as in singular kinds of positions of either it's growth or it's drinking water or it's green space, if we look at a broad picture of the DRGR and try to figure out how you save it, how you make it what we want it to be in the future, then that's where we need to be. And that's been my drive all along, is to figure out what you really can do and want to do with the DRGR.
Earlier on, you touched on the downtown and it being a unique place. The project that's down there, you were part of the council vote.
Absolutely.
On that.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think the budget is as tight as it can be for that project, or what's your feeling on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that question means. We were very careful about what we did with money. We put $16 million into an infrastructure that you'll never see what we did. Utilities underground, stormwater drainage underground, parking, and those are the kinds of things, you have to have an infrastructure like that in order to gain private investors. And we have. We have people coming downtown now who are taking parcels of land and creating an old Florida style for buildings that are residential, mixed use, retail residential mixed use. And that's what we need. We need to be able to draw them. You need residents down there before you can get, before you get retail. One of the things I'm most proud of being able to do, my role with Florida Gulf Coast University as chairman of the foundation board has allowed me to make some contacts out there, including I have what I would consider to be a personal relationship with President Bradshaw. I took President Bradshaw over the last 3 years. I've taken President Bradshaw out 3 times to the Wonder Garden. I said, I want you to see this. I want you to understand what this could be. First time out there, we still had mammals on property, and it was not exactly lovely, but it was nice. There's potential there. And as it started to evolve, I kept bringing him back, and the last time it's been probably 4 or 5 months now, he brought his staff out, including Dr. Toll, the provost. They saw what was going on, and they promised that by the fall we would have classes and laboratories in the Water Gardens. What this does for us is puts a FGCU flag out on the porch of the Wonder Gardens, and it brings a whole new face to downtown. Students, parents, staff, and that draws more retail of the kind of business that we want downtown. Destination retail. So I think your question was around the cost of it. And yeah, it's costly. There's no question. It's 40 years in the making. But I'll say it for the second time. One of the candidates said, I support the downtown, but I'm voting against the budget. And I'm not sure how you can do that exactly. You got to have money to do it. But I think it was concern of deficit spending, which it wasn't. It's, you know, we've got this covered. It is debt, but it's coverable. And the downtown, you know, the Wonder Gardens itself, when the Piper family owned it, was for sale to some developers, which I don't think most of us wanted to see high rises going up on the Imperial River downtown. So when a group of very well-founded people who have been in this community for a long time got together and created their own organization and foundation and said, we want to make sure we can save this piece of property and turn it into what it ought to be, the city helped them. It's a great example of a public-private partnership. I'm proud of it. I think it's in 20 years from now, people will be saying, what a terrific idea. How clever of those folks, although they never remember our names at that point. But it's it's the kind of thing that we should have done.
Should the city have an annexation strategy, and if so, what should that be?
Well, if you look at our charter, the city charter, I think it was section 16, talked about the buffer between what was incorporated in 1999 and the 2-mile buffer. And we consciously did not take advantage of when the time lapse passed that we could annex that piece of property. We didn't, because it was not the right thing to do to involuntarily annex, in my opinion, and I think most of the council's opinion, to annex that piece of property. Looking back, it might have saved some aggravation, but it would have created a good deal of aggravation if we'd done that. My whole concern about annexation was when the city boundaries were cut in '99, they used the fire district, and the fire districts were cut in the 1800s, well before any developers came in and started building homes here. So the top 20% of Pelican Landing got separated out between the city of Bonita Springs and what was going to be the village of Estero. So my concern at that point was that we give the people in Bonita Springs an opportunity, in Pelican Landing, the opportunity to say, do I want to be under one municipal government or under two? And that's what I guess created this turmoil. But I'd do it again. I think people ought to have a right to choose when there's an opportunity to choose. Some people chose to come into Bonita, some chose to go into Estero, and that's good. But the bigger picture, Brent, is it's important that I say this, the village of Estero and the city of Bonita Springs are going to be terrific partners together. This is a bump in the road right now, this whole annexation, city, villagehood, and so on. We will be so much more powerful in Tallahassee as two voices speaking as one. And in 15 years, city lines won't make the difference they do now. We have too much in common. We have roads that connect. We have economic development packages that are part and parcel. We have environmental issues that can't be separated by city lines. So, and frankly, my job is easier now that there is an incorporation of the village of Estero. I work with people who are elected, not self-appointed. They have term limits, not lifetime limits. They operate on the same sunshine law as I do. It has the making of a great partnership between the two cities. So when you talk about annexation strategy, I don't think we have a strategy of annexation. I think we have an opportunity to bring two cities together that will clearly work well together, separate and equal, but will work together well.
With each of the mayors in the past, there are certain projects that sort of tied to them, and people remember them for what they brought to the city.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward, if you're elected mayor,
yeah.
How do you hope history will look at your term as a mayor and remember you as?
I don't know how history will really look at me, but I think the things you'll see differently in my tenure are a new high school, a new library, a downtown that people are so excited to visit that you'll be amazed. I think you'll see a continued involvement of people in the community who want to be part of the city, and it ranges from organizations clear through volunteer positions on in the city itself. We can't manage a city of our size with the tax base we have if it was all city employees. We have a small number of very dedicated professional city employees, around the number of 50, for a city of 47,000. And probably if you went on the roads right now, it's 120,000. But yeah, it's the percentage of the worker to citizens is small. And we couldn't do that without two things: partnerships and volunteers. We started to talk about volunteers. We have 100 volunteers who work on city projects, everything from land planning, street lights, zoning, veterans affairs. And then we have partnerships that I think are absolutely critical. We don't have our own police force. We partner with the Lee County Sheriff. We have our own community policing department through the sheriff. Never had anything except good to say about that relationship. It's sort of misperceived sometimes, but the Bonita Springs Fire and Rescue District is not part of the city. It's a state organization, so we partner for our fire and rescue, and we partner with Bonita Springs Utilities for our water and wastewater. Those three partnerships have allowed us to keep tax rates down, and more selfishly, it's allowed me on council to focus on strategy and policy rather than firefighter pensions and police officer personnel issues. So I think, pardon me, I got a little carried away on how excited I am about the way we manage the city, but the things you're going to see that come under my purview are those three, plus a downtown that people are going to say, this is the place I want to be.
those 120,000 people that are out there driving around now, what relief are you going to bring them in terms
Well,
of...
you know, it's you have to have people have been hesitant about roads, and I understand that. There was a comment made on council a while back. In fact, we were going through this intersection study at 41 of Bonita Beach Road, and the comment was made, you don't want to build roads. If you build roads, they'll come. They're coming, you know. And if you don't have an infrastructure to support them, then the quality of your life is going to go down. This growth issue in Bonita, you might be able to stop growth in Bonita Springs. I think it'd be against the law, but you could probably stop all growth. But you can't stop growth in Estero. You can't stop growth in North Naples and Fort Myers Beach, and they're all using our roads. So the mayor and I thought we were pretty lucky to get $1 million Department of Transportation study to look at the intersection 41 and Bonita Beach Road. And to be a study, you had to look at all options, and one of those options would have been an above level, what got termed a flyover. It was never going to be a flyover. It couldn't have been a flyover. It couldn't have passed the impact tests, the environmental, social, economic impact tests. There was no appetite for it. It couldn't have passed public scrutiny. So I kept taking a beating because I was voting for what I believed was a study to see what the potential options were to get through that intersection. And it got so wrapped up emotionally in a flyover that we lost $1 million. Now there's a project in front of council for a Bonita Beach Road visioning study that will include a study of that intersection, and now our taxpayers are going to pay for it instead of the $1 million that we had in DOT. And I talked to the DOT. I'd asked specifically questions about what about this so-called flyover. They said New Smyrna, Florida went through the same agony you are. They went ahead, they were sure it was going to be a flyover. We went ahead and did the intersection study. It was not a flyover. They've solved the problem. So I think we let emotion get ahead of our good sense at this point, but it's still a very contentious issue. I realize that.
Will the mayor have a role to play in the future of the dog track, or is that out of his hands?
No, I think our response, we've taken a role already, but it's an economic development question, Brent. The people that own a dog track don't want to race dogs. They lose money, according to them, every time they put a race on. And in order to have gambling, morality aside, in order to have gambling, they have to have dogs. So I think the mayor, I think the council, I think the people in the city in this county who voted 67% to allow broader gambling in that area would say it's our responsibility to make sure that we do it correctly. Second time saying it, morality aside, to make sure that we use that property and that a potential for jobs, 400 jobs as I understand what could be there, if we get a fair kind of approach out of Tallahassee on gambling.
Did you go so far as to lobby Tallahassee for anything specifically?
I don't lobby. I just don't do that very well. I kind of stand in the background, but I can tell you that if the public believes something ought to happen, I'll go to bat for them. And the public has said we need to figure out how to use that property and that potential better than what we have. I have been up to Tallahassee. I sort of stay in the background because I'm not that good at self-promotion, but I believe our legislators in Tallahassee understand exactly what we want, and I believe they're trying to do what's best for us.
You talked about Mayor Nelson. Can you kind of describe for us what your style will be if you're mayor, your management style, the way you'll run meetings? Some of the governments around here cut people off as soon as they're 2 minutes or 3 minutes and cut off public speakers. What's your style?
Yeah, I think I carry the same style I've carried through boards of directors and corporate life and as a manager of my own business. The first thing I'm ethical in the way I approach things. I believe I have a value system that says let's be fair and honest about what we do. Let's be transparent in the decisions we make. Let's involve the people who will be affected by the decisions you make. And let's make sure that if you're really managing people and not just issues, that the people who are involved get good feedback on did it work or did it not work. I think Mayor Nelson has a style that's embracing a lot of times, and I admire that. I'm probably not altogether as patient as he may be, but I think if you look at my history as a leader in organizations, it's one that's open and fair, and one that allows people to be part of the decisions that are being made. I'm a good decision maker, partly because I'm a pretty good thinker. I do look broad term. I look at what the contingencies will be or could be, and I try to plan for those ahead of time so that we don't stub our toes as we move along. There are always surprises, but typically I'm prepared for them.
You mentioned you don't lobby earlier. You mentioned one of the things that may happen as a high school during your term.
Oh, that I would lobby for.
You would lobby for?
Yes, I have lobbied.
Where are you going to lobby?
I guess lobbying has.
Which site?
That was a different question. I guess the way I took it. I've met personally with Superintendent Atkins. One of the things I'm pleased with, I've been Lee County Schools Partner of the Year. I've worked in this. I mentioned to you I'm publicly educated. I've worked in this school system for 20 years with kindergarten reading programs, leadership academies for the high school, government day for the middle school, all the way through. So I've earned an opportunity to be able to make a comment periodically that I think is seen as having some sense to it. And I said to him, look, all the negative vibes coming out of Bonita Springs, I don't want you to think that we don't want a high school. We want that high school. We deserve that high school. We have 1,600 high school age kids in Bonita Springs who are busing all across the county. We want that high school. It's your responsibility to find a place where it's safe and where it makes sense to the neighboring communities, because that's the things that are most important to the citizens in this city. Safety of our kids and a place that doesn't disrupt the normal neighborhood standards.
Do any of the sites that have been kicked around so far fit that bill?
You know, I think all of them have pluses and minuses. The Hunter's Ridge, I think, was a surprise to people because I think a lot of people thought it was going to go out there on that parcel of property they have that's sort of in the environmentally sensitive area. So it was a surprise. I think if they'd had more time to think about it, maybe their position would be differently. I don't know. I think I'm confident that the school board will find the right place. I'm not trying to hedge on this. I'm just telling you, I believe they've done this a lot longer than anybody that's been involved in it in the city of Bonita Springs, and they'll find the right place. And I did have a conversation with George Clover Saturday, who's the previous principal of Bonita Springs High School, and we talked about sites. And he's convinced that there's an architectural and a site design that would all but eliminate the issues with noise and traffic. It just, depending where you set it, it wouldn't be the cookie cutter thing that they have done because of saving time. It would be one that is designed to fit the neighborhood in which it's set.
Does affordable housing, where does affordable housing fit into the whole downtown and the city in general?
No, absolutely, great question. We have our nurses and teachers from Florida Gulf Coast University can't afford to live in Bonita Springs where they work. We have to have a process that developers take a role in creating affordable housing for our young professionals. Now, I know you start to potentially violate federal laws on age when you start to describe it as young professionals, but realistically, we need to have incentives created for our developers when they're building downtown that they set aside lofts or smaller units, things that allow reasonable rental or even purchase for what we now kind of wholly described as young professionals. It's possible, we can do it, we just haven't put our mind to it yet. And we all have kids coming out of college. Well, Richard won't for my Treasurer Richard Garnwell for a few more years, but because he started late. But at some point, he's going to have to find ways to get his kids and everybody else's kids who are coming out of college places to live that they can walk to work. That's one of the great things about 20 years from now downtown. You're going to have places where people don't have to have vehicles. They can walk, ride their bikes, get to school, get their groceries, and that'll be an important part. I won't be mayor, obviously, in 20 years, but I think I can set the stage to make that become a reality.
Half hour goes by pretty quickly here.
For you.
What do you want to, what do you want to wrap up here?
I think one of the questions that constantly comes up is how are you different from your candidate, from your opponents? Three ways. I can tell you that my experience, my community service, and my commitment all make me distinct from my opponents. I've been deputy mayor for 4 to 6 years. I have a background on strategic planning. I have the endorsement of all 3 of the previous mayors in terms of experience. I've worked in this community for 20 years. I was raised in a Quaker church where the first thing I was taught was give back, and I've been able to do that. And I'm honored to be Bonita Springs Citizen of the Year, Lee County Schools Partner of the Year, Chamber Director of the Year, Rotarian of the Year. That's not why you do it, but that gives you the opportunity to speak to people throughout the community who know and trust you. And the final is commitment. This is my home. This is where I live. This is where I'm going to be. This is not a stepping stone for me. This is not a place for me to start some career in politics. When I'm mayor, I'm still going to be your neighbor.
Thank you.